So yesterday we were discussing about this magnetic tapes and wires, normally which are made up of some magnetic oxides, so mostly ferrimagnetic oxides like uh, iron 2O3, so gamma iron 2O3 or chromium oxide, which are used as the storage medium. And normally the reading and writing is done using a recording head, which is nothing but a simple, like it's based on magnetic induction principle. So you can use the same coil to read as well as to write. So when you apply external current to the coil, so you generate a magnetic field, and this magnetic field will align the domains, and then you can store your information or your data in these domains. And in order to read it, so when you move these magnetic medium under the your reading head or your recording head, so you induce there will be a change in magnetic field, and that will induce a current, which basically you can amplify and then later on detect to identify or read the data. This is a very simple technique that was used in earlier times, where cassettes were used, and you can store songs and videos and all the things you can store using this magnetic medium. And what is the properties that you need for the for this material, so which you use like a storage medium? So it should have a high cohesivity so that it does not get demagnetized that easily. But also the cohesivity should not be that high. Otherwise, it'll be difficult to write because you need a very high field to reverse the domains, and then that will be difficult then. And also you need to read the signal from these domains. So you need a good enough or high enough magnetization. And that restricts the material, the choice of the material to only few. And again, you also have to look at the cost, also the mechanical properties, or like they should not degrade. So based on all these parameters, so normally people use this gamma iron 2O3 or chromium dioxide as the storage medium. And for the recording, for the head, so it is basically again based on a magnetic induction principle. So it should have a high permeability, and of course a low cohesivity. And the material choices were basically soft permalloy or soft ferrites, which were used. So soft means they always have a high permeability. So you have in magnetic material, so you have soft and hard magnetic materials. So your magnetic medium where you store the data is always a hard magnetic material, but the recording head, the coils that you use, or the core that you use, so normally is a soft ferromagnetic material. Then we discussed about, so this is from the tapes and wires. So now what is most the magnetic storage medium that is used by everyone is this modern hard disk drives, and the design is basically as you see on the right hand side. So it consists of a magnetic medium again, where you store the information, which is known as your platter. So it is like a disk, and then you have this small portion here, the red color circle you see here is the read and write head. And the design of reading and writing head and the magnetic medium is basically like So the in 1950s, when this concept was used, so using this discs or these platters and some reading and writing mechanism that was used. So again, the same, you can read and write using a inductive uh, induction principle, magnetic induction principle, but the structure was quite large and it can only store only 4 MB megabytes of data. But now you can store like more than a terabyte of data on these small platters, and you can even read it, write it very fast. Okay, so the accessibility is high, the read and write speed is quite high. So there are a lot of technologies or nanotechnology that is involved here, which led to this transformation, this rapid transformation in the magnetic hard disk technology. So if you look at like a schematic of this magnetic hard disk here, so on the the left and right basically the same picture, but you see it from different angles. So in the bottom, so let's look at this figure here on the right hand side, the schematic figure. So what you have is the bottom is your magnetic medium where you store the information. And nowadays, what is the magnetization, the orientation of magnetization is actually perpendicular. So therefore, it is known as a perpendicular recording medium. So in the earlier time until 2000, it was normally the magnetization was in plane, and they were known as longitudinal recording medium. But right now, all the hard disks that you see, they are the magnetization is perpendicular to the surface, and they are called as perpendicular recording medium. And that is that actually has increased the density, like how much data you can store per inch, or areal density that is normally known in the magnetic hard disk in the industries. So you can increase the areal density if you go from a longitudinal to a perpendicular recording medium. And on the top, what you see here is basically your recording read and write head. Okay, so if you look carefully, so the bulk or the big one is here, the right head. So it is again based on the same principle of it's like an electromagnet, small electromagnet, but the special design is meant for creating a very concentrated or high magnetic field in a very small region. Okay, and this is the design of the writing head, but the principle again is based on the same electromagnets. So again, you apply a current and you produce the magnetic field, and you change the magnetization using the magnetic field. So that is how you can write. And the reading is done with a sensor. It is not anymore. So in the previous case, the reading and writing was done by the same head, but now you use a different sensor here to read this magnetization. And this sensor is so right now normally what is used is a magnetoresistance sensor, and the reason is you can improve the sensitivity of your so you can read a very small change in magnetization, and that is why these sensors are used. So here is animation of how this writing works. Okay, so what you see here is, so you apply a current, and depending on the bias current, the flow of current direction, so you can reverse the magnetic field. and each you can write. Yeah, so you can write a bit by reversing the current flow through the writing head. Okay, and this blue and red are basically up, down and up magnetization. And you clearly see how the magnetic flux lines were flowing through the whole structure. So this is the animation, how the writing works. And this is an animation how you can read the data. So what you see here is, so you see a jump, this transition, this spike at the, when there is a transition between two domains, and that normally you read as 1. So uh, if there is no transition, it will be 0, and if there is a spike, so it is 1, and this is how you can encode or read this information. So here it is shown for a longitudinal magnetization, but the principle is again the same for a transverse or a perpendicular medium as well. Okay, so this is how you can read, and this is where the sensor will be crucial. So what is the sensor? The properties of the sensor, the magnetoresistive sensor that is used, so that will decide like how sensitive you are to this signal. So how, so there was a question I think yesterday from Ronak, how nanotechnology is really used here in these storage devices. So as I said, so if you want to increase the density of data storage, like now it is changed from 4 megabyte to like more than 4 terabytes, so even 10 terabytes of data that you can store. And that was possible due to this development of magnetic materials with very tiny grains, small grains. Okay, so where so if you want to increase, so if I say I am storing the information in a domain, so that means you can say, okay, if I reduce the domain size, so that means that is a straightforward way to increase the storage density, right? So if I increase the so typical domain size, let's say in a bulk material will be like of the order of a micron. Okay, so now if I assume that, so normally it is not like one domain is like a 1 bit, but ideally that is what you want. So you can further reduce the dimension. So you can go to make the domain size go to few hundred nanometer or even about 100 nanometer. So you can naturally increase the density of the medium so that you can store more information in the same area. So that is a straightforward way where nanotechnology is used, or this thin film, the deposition, how you deposit your magnetic material. So that is where it has played a role. And another important aspect is this reading. Like I said, talked about this sensors. So these are these magnetoresistive sensors, and that means, so the sensors are sensitive to your magnetic field. That means if you change the magnetic, so you will look at the sensor design. So they are based on this GMR or a TMR sensor. So GMR is, it stands for giant magnetoresistance, and TMR is for tunneling magnetoresistance. So all these sensors and the storage medium, so all the development was due to new magnetic materials as well as a development in thin film technology that led to this increase in storage density. So if you look at a storage medium a little bit closer, so what you have is, so sometimes, so we say, okay, if you have a single domain, one domain can be used as a one single bit, but ideally that is not the case. So normally you take several domains and make it as a one single bit. Okay, so but most of the domains will be pointing in the almost the same direction. Okay, so this is how you can define one bit here. Uh, I mean, if you want to look at properties again, like what we discussed before, so it should have high enough coercivity to resist local demagnetization. Then also have so high, it should be high coercivity. So low coercivity should be so that you can write it easily, and also high magnetization. So there will be several things which are going to be affected when you reduce the domain size. So that means, okay, so you can increase the coercivity, which is good, but then it is not ideal for writing purposes, because then you need a higher field to write or to reverse these domains. So, and what else can happen? So when you reduce the domain size and you say, okay, I am using one single domain for one bit, so that means the magnetic signal, the magnetization from each domain is so small compared to, let's say, if I take 10, so this is about the magnetic volume that is being used to store the a bit of information. Now, if the volume is less, so obviously the magnetization will be less, because uh, yeah, it is related to your volume. So, so that means the magnetic signal is small, and therefore it will be difficult to read the information as well. There are several things one has to take care of, and many. So, so the design right now, or like how one can improve these things. So to increase the storage density, so you can use like a patterned medium. So this is like where so this is a disk, and the conventional storage medium is like you have these domains. Okay, so one track, let's say if you look at a one single track, so you have and each bit can consist of several domains. Okay, so it is not like just one domain means one bit, but several domains will make a one single bit. But to increase, so what you want is make one domain as a one bit, and this can be done by, if you can pattern it using some lithographic techniques, uh, and this is actually is being implemented as well. So you can make this pattern magnetic medium, and use, so pattern it in a such a way that one typical pattern, the dimension would be a few hundred nanometer, and each one can act as a bit, as a storage, one bit of information it can store. So that has increased the storage density by a huge amount. So this is, here is a picture of actually how a real magnetic hard disk looks like. So this image is taken by a magnetic force microscope. So this is where you are sensitive to magnetic signal of your sample. Okay, and so typically, so here you can clearly see these different bits that has been written here, and you can see, so you can write, and this small bits that you see here in the middle, okay, this small contrast that you see. So the contrast is, means you have a, so you can say one, so the dark contrast, let's say, is a positive or the up magnetization, and the bright contrast is your down magnetization, let's say, so up and down. So this is a perpendicular recording medium, and you can see clearly this tiny small in the center, almost in the center, this track. Okay, this small contrast here. So this size is typically about 25 nanometer. So that means you can really create these bits with such a tiny dimension, 25 nanometer. Okay, and you can still store the information in that bit. So that means you can really increase the storage density by patterning in this way. However, the challenge right now is how you are going to read this data. Okay, so let's say I can create it by some way, but how can I read this data so that there is no intermixing? So I can clearly read this information that, okay, this 25 nanometer belongs to one bit. Okay, the next 25 nanometer belongs to another bit. Okay, so this is where the sensors technology will be used. But however, can we go on decreasing this size more and more? Or is there a limit to this bit size? There is, of course, a limit, and what sets the limit? So this is set due to this super paramagnetism. So we already discussed about this in the last fractal course, that if you have a magnetic material and you reduce its size, so you, in the beginning, of course, you can increase the coercivity. You start from a multi-domain state and you go to a single domain state. But if you even reduce further, so below a certain critical size, your material will go into your magnetic material. Although it is in a single domain state, so it will become super paramagnetic. So that means the thermal energy will be so high that it can overcome your anisotropy energy. So your anisotropy energy is your K into V, and thermal energy is high enough, so uh, it will lead to a thermal fluctuation of your magnetization. It is not like a paramagnetic, it is different from a paramagnetic fluctuation, thermal fluctuation. So here your magnetization will basically fluctuate between, so two EG axes. So this is your EG axis of your magnetization. So either it will be parallel to it or anti-parallel to it. And your magnetization will fluctuate like that. And due to this thermal fluctuation, so your, so which is detrimental for your storage. So when you store some information in a bit, so what you want that it should have thermal stability. So if it starts fluctuating, so when you read, so you never know what is the exact, what is the data that you have stored. So it will be lost. So you want a thermal stability for your material. And that is why you cannot go on decreasing the size of your magnetic material or your domain size, uh, and this limit is actually a challenge for future to improve the storage density of magnetic materials. So this super paramagnetism is actually a big challenge, which was realized. I mean, it is not a new idea or a new challenge. So this challenge was well known even in like 20 years ago or 25 years ago even. And there are people, there are ways you can, people have overcome this challenge so far. So you can design materials which where you can go to, or for whom, for those particles or the materials, the super paramagnetic size is small. So for example, nowadays the magnetic material that is used for storage devices is a cobalt, platinum, and chromium. It is an alloy, cobalt, platinum, and chromium. And this has a super paramagnetic limit about 5 nanometer. So you can reduce your bit size. You can go up to 5 nanometer and use that as a one single bit. And the thermal fluctuation is not going to kick in or or change or the thermal fluctuation is not going to affect this orientation of magnetization. So, so this is so, but the challenge again with this cobalt, chromium, platinum is to control the grains. So you have to make these 5 nanometer or maybe 6 nanometer grains, and they have to be stable as well. So they should be grown in such a way that they retain their magnetic properties quite well. So that is also a challenge in the thin film deposition as well. But this is basically so you cannot keep on reducing the size of the domain forever. So there is always be a limit which is set by the super paramagnetic. So this is due to the thermal fluctuation. Okay, so the question of how you can read these tiny bits. So now you saw that you can go to a bit size of 25 nanometer, or even you can go up to actually like 6-7 nanometer. And how can you read? So you can imagine, so your bits, so they are really close by. So 6 nanometer, these grains or magnetic domains are sitting there, and you have to read information only from this one bit. So not the next bit should not interfere with it. And moreover, the signal, the magnetic signal, the flux line that is coming out from one bit should be strong or high enough so that this sensors can detect it. And these sensors are then based on this magnetoresistance. Okay, so all materials actually show some kind of magnetoresistance. So if you apply a magnetic field, so there is always will be some change in resistance. Now the question is, how much is the change? Okay, so if you take a simple ferromagnet, a soft ferromagnet like iron nickel, okay, this permalloy, so the change in magnetization or the resistance due to a magnetic field is about 2%. So you see a 2% change. And in the beginning of 1990s, so this permalloy was used as a reed head. Okay, so at that time, instead of using this induction principle of induction, magnetic induction, so you can use this magnetoresistance as a sensor or this is known as an anisotropic magnetoresistance. So just you take a simple layer of ferromagnetic material, a soft ferromagnetic material, and you have certain resistance now in presence of a magnetic field, and this magnetic field will be created by the layer, by your magnetic medium which is underneath. So you move the sensor there and you see a change in the current and or the resistance, and then you can calculate how much change and what is the change that correspond to how much magnetic field, and that is how you can read it. But as you improve, as you make your bit size smaller and smaller, this 2% change is not enough, because your magnetic signal from this small bits will be so small that this resistance change, I mean, typically the change in resistance will not be detected by a anisotropic magnetoresistance AMR element. And that is where this GMR, this GANT magnetoresistance was introduced. And it is basically, it's like a thin film structure. Okay, so the basic structure is like you have two magnetic layers separated by a non-magnetic metallic layer. So normally you have, let's say you can take here, so the blue one can be the cobalt or iron, and the red one will be again another ferromagnetic material, can be iron, can be same or can be different. So it can be either iron or cobalt, for example. And the green one, the spacer layer, it is a non-magnetic metal. So that is a GMR structure. And these structures were investigated like in 1980s, 1982 in that time. And people observed a huge change in the resistance. So when you are passing a current through this structure, so now again you are passing a current, in plane current. Okay, so current direction of current is shown by this black arrow. So when you pass a current through it, so you see a huge change in resistance, and this change was almost like 20%, 25%, and sometimes it can go even up to like 50, more than 50 or 60%. So depending on what ferromagnetic material that you are taking. So these are all very thin films, and normally the total thickness of these sensors will be around 20 nanometer to 30 nanometer. So very small thin film deposition you have to do, but the change in resistance will be quite huge. And that is where the sensitivity has increased, and these GMR elements were used like in the early 2000 as a sensor or as a read height. And later on, right now, what is used as a TMR element, so tunneling, this tunnel magnetoresistance. So the principle is quite similar. So you use both the top and the bottom would be again a ferromagnetic layer, but the spacer layer, it is not anymore a magnetic or a metallic, it is actually an insulator. And that means you have a possibility of tunneling. So this insulator is like a barrier layer, which is very thin, and therefore you can have an electron tunneling through. Okay, so from the top to the bottom layer. And in this case, the resistance depends again on magnetic field as well. So how much magnetic field you are applying. And the change that was observed was about, more than 500% or even 1000% in some cases. So if you go to a little bit low temperature, but mostly at room temperature, it was always more than 100% change. So this, and that increased the sensitivity quite a lot. Okay, so from a 2% to 20% to almost more than 100% or 200% change was a big achievement in terms of when you fabricate or design your sensor in this way. So just by replacing your one layer by two ferromagnetic layer separated by a spacer layer, and now the spacer layer, instead of taking metallic, if you make it insulating, like aluminum oxide you can take, or magnesium oxide. So these are typical spacer layers or barrier layers, insulating layers that is used. So you can improve the sensitivity by a lot. And so this is again a picture of like as a function of magnetic field, how the resistance will change. So if you have these two magnetic layers, so either they can be parallel to each other, the magnetization, or they can be anti-parallel. Now, if they are parallel to each other, so resistance is normally small, okay? And if the magnetic field is, if the magnetization is anti-parallel, so the resistance, it is in a high resistance state. So that means you can clearly, and this change, this delta R by R, this change in resistance is typically what, when I say this 20% change, okay? So if you take a single layer, so this jump will be maybe by 2%, but again, you need a high magnetic field. But here, you can achieve this 20% jump with a very small magnetic field, and that is why the sensitivity is good. And this is again a very simplistic picture how you can, how the resistance depends or varies as a function of angle. Okay, so if the external magnetic field, so this bar magnet represents your external magnetic field, which is basically, you can assume this is your magnetic medium, right? So instead of the bar magnet, so you can use your magnetic medium where you have stored the information, and now you bring the sensor, and depending on the angle of, so what this magnet will do will basically, so in the typical design, what is done is, so you fix the magnetization of the bottom layer, okay? So the green will be fixed, and this top layer will be to be able to rotate. You will be able to rotate the magnetization. And so that means this top layer will follow the magnetization direction of your bar magnet or your magnetic medium. So that means as the depending on the orientation of magnetization of the your magnetic medium, so the top layer magnetization will rotate, and depending on what is the rotation angle between the top and the bottom layer, so you will have a different resistance. So that means when they will be parallel, so resistance will be almost negligible. Or, I mean, there will be resistance, of course, but small. But when you go to 180-degree orientation, the resistance will be large. And so that is how you can detect or read your data. So this is again just a extension of that. So what you have is again So you don't have actually normally when these structures are created, it is not a simple just 3 layers that are created, but there are some additional layers also needed. It is known as a spin valve structure, so we'll not go into the detail of that. But what you have is basically you need this active sensor layer. So you have a pinned layer, so where, and then the reference layer. So your the green layer, for example, is your reference layer. So where its magnetization is basically fixed, the direction will be fixed, and then the top layer will be your free layer, and this top layer will uh, will rotate. The magnetization will rotate depending on what is the magnetization of your bit. So whether it is up or down, so it will rotate by some angle, okay, due to this bit, the magnetic flux or the magnetic field lines that is coming out. So they from these bits, so it will rotate by some angle, and then you detect the change in resistance, and that is how you can read this data. So the basic difference between a GMR and TMR is, again, like you need two ferromagnetic layer separated by a spacer layer. So in case of GMR, it is a metallic. In case of TMR, it is insulating, a barrier layer. And in case of the GMR, the current flows in plane, okay, and in case of TMR, the current is perpendicular. The flow of current direction is perpendicular along the to the structure. Okay, so this is the basic difference between a TMR and GMR. Of course, the TMR will have a much larger sensitivity, or the change in resistance can be are typically much higher, of the order of few 100% compared to your GMR elements. I mean, the reason is, so I'll just explain it in one slide. It depends on something known as spin dependent scattering. So the resistance is always due to the scattering of electrons. So normally when we talk about electron scattering, we don't consider the spins. So we just, okay, this electrons will be scattered due to some charge centers or due to the lattice, okay, I mean due to the phonons, or maybe due to the impurities. But there is also a scattering dependent on the spin. Okay, so when you look at ferromagnetic material, so you have always spin up, and so you can break your electrons into spin up and spin down channels. So you can assume it is like two different channels. Okay, so spin up channel, it has a one separate channel, and spin down will have a different channel. And normally what is assumed is like there will be no clipping of spin. So if the spin is up, so it will always remain up even after scattering. Okay, so there is no clipping of spins. And then this model can be easily understood in a, like a, you can consider it like a two different channels or two different registers. Okay, so in the on the extreme left, what you see is a like a typical register model of the spin dependent scattering. So for the up spin, you can say, so you have the spin up, this is a channel, okay, and this is the spin. Yeah, so for two different layers. So since you have two different layers, so ferromagnetic layer, so you have like a resistance for top and the bottom, okay. And similarly for the spin down channel also you have a top and a bottom layer. And normally this non-magnetic layer is not going to really, I mean, this does not recognize any spin dependent scattering. So only the ferromagnetic layer will have the spin dependent scattering. And so if they are parallel right now, so what happens? So this open means it is a low resistance state, and the shaded one means it is a high resistance. So RL stands for low, RH stands for high. So when you look at when they are parallel to each other, the magnetization, so for the spin up, so let's say the parallel arrangement, this is a spin up channel. Okay, that means the spin up will be less scattered, so resistance will be less because it has a preferred, so the magnetization is for it is in a preferred orientation. So if the electron spins is along the magnetization direction, so the spin up direction, so then the scattering will be less, and therefore the resistance will be low, and that is what is represented here in the blue. So both the layers will have low resistance. So that means the spin up will scatter less. However, the spin down will scatter more. Okay, so that means you only have a one single spin that can flow through the your entire structure, your GMR structure or your TMR structure quite easily, and that's why the resistance will be low. So the total resistance will be low. Okay. However, if you have a anti-parallel orientation of magnetization, so one layer is, let's say, pointing up, the second layer is pointing down, so then both the spin channels, so spin up and spin down, will experience a high resistance state. So for example, the blue one will experience a high resistance state in the upper layer, and the spin down electrons will experience a high resistance in the bottom layer, and that is why the total resistance will go up. Okay, so this is a very simple model to understand this spin dependent scattering. So you have two independent spin channels, and they will scatter depending on what is the orientation of magnetization. Okay. Yeah, any question from, if you have, just, is it clear or not?
Yes, I have one
Yes.
question, sir. Sir, we moved from GMR to TMR, so we increase the sensitivity of the sensor. So at what cost we increase the sensitivity?
Cost means?
Sir, the cost of sensor like GMR or TMR.
Oh, no. Look, normally the cost is not that high. The reason is, so typically this is all pretty much based on this thin film deposition technique. So you need, for both, you need a thin film deposition, you need a vacuum chamber. Okay, so you need a really nice clean room. So in terms of how much you invest, like the fabrication of sensors is not, there is not a big difference. Okay, so only thing is, I mean, why this is being adapted quite nicely is, I mean, here again, you produce in a, like a large scale, in an industrial scale. So like you take this these big wafers, silicon wafers, and you can produce like thousands and maybe millions of sensors on one substrate in a one process flow, and therefore it is not really adding to the cost so much. And in terms of the materials that you use, so typical like TMR, you use this iron, cobalt, or boron, this kind of alloy, and magnesium oxide, or mostly now magnesium oxide is used. But that is not really, and even this sensor thickness, the total thickness of a TMR element is even much smaller. So for a GMR element, normally, as I said, it is like about 20 nanometers to 30 nanometers. But for TMR, it is even smaller, because the barrier layer would be like only a few nanometers, or even less than a nanometer normally. So it is not really adding, in terms of the cost, it is not much.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Any other question?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, firstly, you have showed that the reading process of this, that the two domains are reversely
Hmm.
polarized. So we get a signal from this is 1 and 0,
Hmm.
and next you told about that the layers between two the two opposite layers are, if they are differently oriented, so this is gives high resistance. So I just want to know that how this type of resistance acts here.
Oh, you mean this, like I explained here, this picture, the spin dependent scattering,
No, sir, just
or well, which
yes, sir. Yeah, this.
this one? Yes.
Sir, how this thing is helps us in reading and writing.
Oh, yeah. So if you have a, let's say, so I have this sensor here, and now my magnetization is, let's say, I think from this picture it would be much clear. So let's say I have a bit, okay. So where the, so here the orientation is, it's a bar magnet, but instead of that, let's say I take a magnetization which is pointing down here, okay. And now instead of taking a GMR element, so let's say I have taken a TMR element, okay. So and the orientation you have to change, maybe here in this picture, yeah, okay, yeah. So let's say I have a up, it's a bit which is magnetization up. So now you bring the sensor on top of it, so it will rotate by certain angle, some angle, okay. But now if I bring it to the other bit somewhere here, so then the change, the orientation of the this free layer will change the magnetization direction, okay, and that will change the resistance, okay. So if I have, so I have a 1 bit or a 0 bit, that means either up or down magnetization, and now my magnetization of the sensor will rotate accordingly, uh, whether the magnetization or the, so what you can see here is also the magnetic flux. I mean, this each bit is like a tiny magnet. You can think like that. So each, since this is a tiny magnet, so it has a magnetic field. So basically, the sensor will sense the magnetic field that is coming out from your magnetic bit, okay. So the flux lines that is coming out. Now if the flux lines are pointing in the north south direction or south north direction, so depending on that, your sensor, the magnetization will rotate according to that. And so if the rotation, let's say if it is, let's say for the up direction, so let's say it rotates by, so let's say the rotation, let's say 20 degrees, okay. So if the rotation is 20 degrees, but it rotates in a clockwise direction. But if you go to the next bit where the magnetization is pointing down, so the rotation will be maybe the same 20-degree, but in the other direction, okay, in the anti-clockwise direction. And that means with respect to the reference layer, so the rotation angle is plus 20 or minus 20, and that will give rise to a different resistance, okay.
Okay, sir. Okay,
Yeah,
sir.
and that is how you can detect this change in or read that information.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, any other question? I mean, here what I'm showing is very simple pictures here of the recording, the data storage thing. But the actual, the structure, what happens. So here, I mean, a lot of research has been gone into this, creating this exact, this spin valve. So this is known as a spin valve structure. So a lot of research has been gone, and a lot of many other layers that are actually used as well to really get the best sensitivity from this sensor. It is not just like a just three ferromagnetic two ferromagnetic layers separated by a spacer layer. So that is, of course, your active layer. But however, you need many other designs with that, so which actually led to this the performance of these sensors. Okay, any other question? Okay, so just before I finish, so for the future of the data storage, there is actually this it is known as quadrilemma. Okay, so it's a dilemma, but four different aspects which need to be understood or has to be addressed. So these are all challenges. So one is, of course, how you can make a high density. So all will lead to the high density data storage. So that means you need a small grain. So if you look at the bottom one, so it is like how you can generate small grains. Okay. So how you can create this small grains, you can deposit it without really degrading its magnetic properties. Okay, so that is a challenge. Another challenge is the thermal stability. So that is again related to your super paramagnetism. So typically what you want is your kV, this energy of your single domain system should be, or the ratio of your thermal energy or your magnetic energy to your thermal energy should be more than 60. So that normally is a standard in the industry. So that means if it is more than 60, so typical life will be like 10 years of your that is the life. Okay, so that means your magnetic energy or the anisotropy energy should be 60 times your thermal energy or of your room temperature. And then another thing is this bit error rate. So error rate means it is related to your magnetic signal that is coming out from each bit. So when you reduce the bit size, so as I said, the volume will decrease. So the magnetic signal that is coming from your bit will decrease, and that will lead to a higher error rate when you read this information. And therefore, you have to minimize this error rate. And that is where the sensor development will help. And of course, when you have these small bits, also the challenge is how you can write it, because once you make it smaller, so you have to make your writing head also quite precise, as well as you have to make it because the cohesivity will increase. So that is also a challenge. So all these four challenges have to be addressed simultaneously. So you cannot neglect one and just look at one of the challenge and solve it. So you have to look all these challenges in a holistic way and address each challenge, because sometimes when you make the grain small, so it can also affect the thermal stability. Again, all these are all correlated. That is what this point here is. So for the future, so if you want to really improve the data storage, magnetic data storage, so one has to look at all these aspects and address them simultaneously. And there are different ways that has been actually the industry is trying to solve these issues. So one challenge is like heat assisted magnetic recording. So it is known as HAMR, heat assisted magnetic recording. So that means, so you locally heat the magnetic material, and by locally heating, so you increase the Curie, the temperature. So probably you can go above the Curie temperature, or maybe you can decrease the anisotropy. Okay, in that way you can reverse so this basically will help in writing this small bits. Okay, and there is actually no effort so far on changing the sensors. So sensors are already well developed, and they can actually detect even very small, tiny signals. So that is not a problem right now. Right now, the problem is how you can make it denser. So that means how can you make this bits smaller? and you cannot really make it so small, even if the thermal stability is not an issue, but the issue will be how you can write it. And that is where the people are addressing, other industries looking at different options. So one option that has been like in almost in advanced stage is this heat assisted magnetic recording. So you locally heat your magnetic materials and change the anisotropy, and that is how you can then reverse it easily. That is another way, but there is again different aspects to it. So so there will be a local heating, how you can dissipate that. Okay, so that can also damage other components maybe. Okay, another way is this microwave assisted magnetic recording. So what the basic idea is, this magnetization, which is quite I mean, it has high anisotropy, so it is not easy to reverse by just a magnetic field, just using a simple magnetic field. So either you use a heat, or what you do is, so you can apply a small AC field, and this magnetization will start to rotate. So typically in a microwave, that frequency, so you apply a AC field, and then it rotates this. This magnetization will precess. So typically magnetization will precess about this your AC field, and while precessing, that means then it will be easy to reverse. Okay, so there are ways to so that you use a very small magnetic field to reverse, as well as this precision is you can do very locally in a nanometric scale, because what you want to reverse is a very small tiny domain, which is of the order of maybe 10 nanometer, 5 to 10 nanometer, and therefore this precision you want only to happen in that range. And these are different aspects which are actually actively the industries are looking at. So this heat assisted magnetic recording and this microwave assisted magnetic recording, both hopefully you will see these kind of devices in next five years. Okay, so there are also other concepts. So based on this magnetic tunnel junctions, so the again this like similar to this TMR elements, so one can create these tunnel junctions. Okay, so based on the same principle, and you can actually use it as a storage medium. So here, before it was used for sensor, but this itself can act as a storage medium, so a bit of information. So if it is parallel, so you can say bit memory 0, and if they are anti-parallel, you can say it is 1. And so if you can create a structure of this alternate bits, so you can create this magnetic tunnel junction, this MRAM, magnetic random access memory, which is you can read it faster, and you don't have let's say all these mechanical components. So if you look at your hard disk, for example, you have to rotate your platter, so you have a mechanical rotation. Also you have to move your head, and you have to go precisely to that. So there are a lot of issues there as well, and therefore people are looking at alternate ways to store information. And in context of magnetic medium, it is now this magnetic tunnel junctions. So these are actually I mean, Samsung already has a MRAM like a storage device, but it is still not as cheap or let's say competitive to the existing hard disk, magnetic hard disk. So a lot of research is also going on in this direction for future. Okay, so I will stop right now. Yeah, thank you, and we will again meet on Monday, and we will start with the fractal P part. Okay. Any question?
So I have one idea, like, can we make the new materials which are internally cooled to prevent the thermal fluctuation of the domains, so that we can move to much smaller bit also, and we can overcome the thermal fluctuation energy also?
So how are you going to cool internally?
So like we can make the new materials like which are internally cooled to that state, so we can overcome the thermal fluctuation energy also, and make the bit size of the domains or the grains much smaller also.
No, I mean, in principle, you have to operate at room temperature, right? So how internally, how can you cool it down? Materials.
So like which are internally already cooled, like we
Mhm,
externally we are not applying any cooling effects.
mhm.
Like
No, no. I mean, what do you mean by internally cooling material? I mean, can you give any example?
no, sir, I just have a thought, sir.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's not, let's say, clear how you are going to have a material which is internally cool. So that means you are saying even if the temperature is, we are at room temperature, the structure itself has a lower temperature. Is that
Yes,
what
sir.
you mean?
Yes, yes, sir.
So you want to, so that means you want to somehow thermally isolate it from the external environment.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Uh, hmm,
So
yes.
some heating and cooling happens with voltage also, like in Seebeck effect, or so can those things be applied?
Uh, to have a feedback. No, normally, this like if you want to use a, a cooling like a feedback effect to cool down something. So normally, one has to look at the like how much you can cool. So look, your disk, your platter is quite big, and this normally this cooling with Seebeck effect is very expensive actually. Uh, and as well as I mean there are like people use to cool down detectors, for example. So you can use this semiconductor detectors like on CCDs, so you can cool down them using this thermoelectric cooling techniques,
Okay, sir.
but those are very expensive. And how you are going to mount it on these hard disk drives, because again that will increase to the weight of that. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you can think about it. I mean, I have no answer to that. So what I presented here is the industry is not looking at that aspect. They are looking at basically, um, so cooling. Normally, you use like a normal fan you use to cool in your laptop. Always you have a fan which you switch on, and so you can cool it down. And the heating is not due to not also due to your mechanical movement. Also, that creates also heating. Okay, so yeah. I mean, one has to explore if this is a possible way using a cooling like a Seebeck cooling or something like a thermoelectric cooling mechanism to cool down. But I think the challenge will be with how you can make it compact and put it in for example, in your PC if you want to use it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.